Hi, Year Nines. I wanted to talk to you about the humanities assignment that we will be starting this week. The topic is the Industrial Revolution was a time of great change and development for the lives of the people who lived in Britain, but it was not always for the better. And there's a lot of things in this topic. So a few of the things that I would like you to think about are these questions here. So the first thing I want to think about is this idea of change and development. So you need to think about what were the changes, okay? What were the developments? What were the innovations during the Industrial Revolution? So you're going to need to pick a few of the ones that we've looked at and actually focus in on them and to describe how and what were these great changes. Okay. And so when you look at the changes, you're going to say, how did society change? So how did the whole of the country change, in a big picture way? But also the lives of the people. So what about some individuals, people's lives, or, the impact on not just the whole country, but on some individuals as well. And then I want you also to think about, because the topic has this subheading which says discuss this topic with regards to innovations, working conditions, living conditions, and child labour. So you're going to need to think about the connection between the developments, so the innovations, and working conditions. So clearly you're going to have to think about life in factories and how that impacted working conditions, and also under working conditions, don't forget about child labour there. How did the innovations lead to the changes in the way people lived? And negative and positive, by the way. Don't just think about the negative impacts. Also think about the positive impacts about some of the innovations. So we're going to be looking at both sides. So I've also put this question here. What were the positives coming out of the Industrial Revolution? And what were the negatives coming from the Industrial Revolution? So you don't have to make a decision about the Industrial Revolution being good or bad overall. That's not what they're asking. But you do have to think about the ways that it was good and how and why, and also the ways that it was bad and how and why. So I have made a document here that will help you to know how to do each individual section of your assignment, of your essay, so that the assessment is an essay. You must write between 600 and 900 words. And with an essay, you need to have paragraphs. You need to have an introduction, at least 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And I'm going to look at a body paragraph with you, and I've got an example for you to go through, and then we can look at introductions and conclusions another time because they're very closely connected. So I'm just going to scroll up to this document, and I've got here ideas for body paragraph. I've actually kind of written a very simple sample body paragraph for you to get ideas from, so you can kind of model it on this. This might be a standard paragraph. So if you were looking for above, exceed standard, if you want that, like the B or an A level score, then you're going to have to put in more details and go into more specifics, particularly in relation to cause and effect. But this is what a standard response might look like. So we're going to start every body paragraph with a topic sentence. And a topic sentence is simply, in a really general way, introducing one idea that you're going to focus on. And so as kind of in this particular essay, you're going to maybe choose one industry, so one area that there were innovations, and you can focus in on that. And you can write a general sentence explaining, well, what were the innovations in that industry? So the example says, during the Industrial Revolution, there were many innovations in machines. It's really general. And then it continues, in the agricultural industry, there were developments of farming machinery that changed the way that farms operated. Right? So it's explaining the general innovations. What sort of innovations? Well, innovations in farming machinery that changed farms. Okay? And so now that's like the controlling idea of this whole paragraph. So everything we write in this paragraph has to be about how farming machinery changed the way farms operated and changed the way lives operated. So we're going to focus in on more detail about farm machinery and the impact on people. So that's our topic sentence basically. And then we move on to, so that's T, E, E, L. So the first E is evidence. So we need to give evidence. We can't just say farming machinery changed the way farms operate. We need to prove it by explaining it a bit more and giving specific details of which machinery improved in which way. And the more detailed we can get with evidence and our sources, where we got that information from, the better our marks are going to be. So in this example, I start off with general evidence first, 2A, and in this case, I'm going to introduce the general idea by explaining more about the main change. So before the Industrial Revolution, people's lives in Britain had stayed the same for thousands of years. People mostly worked on farms. I could write mostly worked and lived on farms. When the Industrial Revolution happens, there were new ways of farming. So that's basically evidence, but it's really general evidence. It's kind of like introducing the evidence. And then I'm going to give part B, really specific evidence. And the instructions say choose one or two examples from a primary or a secondary source that gives specific, exact details about these innovations. So we need to actually kind of prove that we've done some research and we've learnt something. So this is the evidence section. And this has, for example, in 1700, Jethro Tull invented a new device called a horse-drawn seed drill. It's actually referenced here by giving the Harvard reference system. Well, who said that and when? And if we go to the end of the essay, we'll actually have the full details from Chapin's article, so we know where to find that. So we know some evidence, specific evidence about the person who invented it, when they invented it, and what they invented. And then we're going to give a little bit more information. Well, why was that relevant? Well, it could plant 3 rows of seeds at a time. So before they were doing those individual seeds by hand, but this meant that it could plant 3 rows of seed at a time, and it mechanized the planting of seeds. This meant that more crops could be produced. So it's actually starting to give the effect here. So more crops could be produced. So that's the evidence. And then we move on to the explanation. Now, to do the explanation, we then need to go into the effect. Well, what was the effect of Jethro Tull's invention and more crops being produced? And we can explain the effect on people and on society. When we explain the effect, we need to use effect language. So we can use things like, this meant that, consequently, as a result, this led to. These are linking words that show an effect. So consequently, the developments in agriculture meant that less workers were required on farms. Many farmers moved to the city to look for work, leading to urbanization as large numbers of people moved from rural areas to the city. So the first effect that this student writes about is urbanization. And also, these changes in farming meant that there was plenty of food for people to eat. Because people had enough food to eat, they were healthier, which had many positive outcomes for society. And it's got another reference there from Japan in 2017. Increased health also led to population growth. So there's all the effect is in here. Population growth, so more people, better health, more food to eat. And so if you want to get the B or the A score, you might need to try to use more than one innovation and effect and be really specific, using some interesting vocabulary choices, some sophisticated language, and to link these together. But for the standard, that's a simple kind of one innovation and two effects. And then finally, the part 4 is linking. We have to finish off the paragraph. And to finish off the paragraph, we've got to go back to our main essay topic. And that main essay topic was the Industrial Revolution. Was it changing for better or worse? Well, actually, it wasn't exactly that. It was like, come back. It was great change and development, not always for the better. So, but it's kind of like linking it back to there was some good change or bad change. And in this case, we link it back to the topic by firstly using a linking word ultimately. Changes in farming during the Industrial Revolution led to many positive changes in society during the 18th and 19th centuries, including population growth, increased health, as well as movement to cities. So there's just a summary statement of all of the things in that paragraph. And that will finish off this idea by linking to the topic. So it kind of addresses, well, what were the major changes for better or worse? We kind of actually assess that there's many positive changes. If they're both positive and negative, you can say led to many positive and negative changes. That's okay too. You need to put them into your own words. You need to create your vocabulary bank, so that like words that you can use for this essay that will help you. But there's a sample of what a paragraph might look like. Now, for your next body paragraph, you might look at a different industry, and then you would repeat that same pattern though. And so for the next one, if we looked at agriculture first, you might look at, transport or textiles or medicine or science and technology. And so you look at different things, different innovations, and then assess what the effect is and what the changes are and whether that's good or bad, for example. And don't forget to use your linking words when you do your second paragraph. So you need to use words like in addition, furthermore, moreover, also, to put your second topic sentence in. And don't forget that this is really up to you what you choose to write about. You don't have to write about agriculture. That was just my example. You could start with transport or start with medicine. You could do it any different ways. If you like, this is just one method. You might start with positive changes and move to negative changes. You might start with working conditions, but I like the idea of kind of setting it up in the beginning by industry and then moving to, in general, workers' conditions and child labour. But that's just my thoughts, I guess. But I'd like you to try writing one paragraph on an industry and an effect, and then showing it to me so I can get a sense of what do I need to do to help you to develop your skills before you actually hand it in? So there you go. That is my first video for humanities on your assessment task for this unit. Thank you so much, everybody.